Welcome to Creative Courage Chats, a search for a new understanding of creativity and problem solving. I'm Alex Raffi. Hi everybody. Today we're back to another Creative Courage Chat, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Harry Fagel. Is it still Captain? Do I still call you Captain? You're retired, but can I still say
Captain? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's up to you. You can call me Harry.
I like saying Captain whenever I can.
Well, Captain Crunch was my nickname for life. So I have a Captain Crunch tattoo that I got after I got promoted.
Well,
so yeah, it's cool.
He is a former Las Vegas Metro police officer, and he's also a poet. And he said, given me the honor of having him on this, so we can talk a little bit about his poetry, and I think a little bit about the work of being a police officer, especially in these times. There's a lot of things that are going on, and so I really appreciate you make the time. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Without sounding too much, without letting ego carry me down the river. I'm in my 50s. I'm a lifelong Las Vegas resident. I grew up here and saw this town emerge into what it's become right now. Of course, we're in a strange spot with COVID, but I've always loved Las Vegas. And every time I travel somewhere else, I long to go back to Las Vegas because I think it's the most interesting city in the world. I just do. It's a really eclectic mix of people. It's incredibly diverse. It's an unusual place. It's not atypical in the manner of anything. And it's so interesting to me. So I'm glad to be a resident of Nevada, and especially Las Vegas and Anderson, where I live. I've raised two children here. One lives in LA now, and one who is he's 17. So he's gonna be a senior in high school. And he's, of course, doing his senior year right now because he wants to have a senior year. But obviously, that's probably not going to be possible.
Right? Yeah, it's right. Mine is 17, so
he'll adapt. But I do, and just as a side note, I do question that it's an interesting time for children that are growing into adulthood right now. Yeah. They're at a very difficult crossroads. So I'm hoping that he'll see the changes that he desires in his lifetime, because I know that he has a lot of interest in seeing the world going the right direction in his mind, whatever that looks like. And I find that neat because we've spent our time as adults and doing our thing, and now it's their turn. And I'm curious, we've given them quite a shit sandwich to eat, so we'll see how they choke it down, and if they can come up with good ideas and good solutions for the world's problems. I'm hopeful, man. I can't help it.
I'm so right with you on that. It's a shame, but I mean, my daughter right now is in an odd place too. I mean, she is coming of age, and she's very angry at us.
I'm not mad at him for that. I get it. And both my son in LA, I mean, he is an amazing human being, my older son. And he's a drag queen in Los Angeles named Delilah Domino. And he has got a following and he does his own thing, but he is extremely interested in the future for himself. And of course he is, he's at that age where he is. And is it at odds with some of my life experience? Well, some of it is, but a lot of it isn't really that far away. It's just that it's a little more than I am used to. Kind of the opinions getting very, very strong in different directions, but I understand it, and I'm proud that both my boys have their own voice, that they read a lot, that they try to understand the big picture. They don't get caught up in one news source or one idea and just run with it. They don't listen to opinions. They look for facts, and they're both really well-adjusted kids. But I do wonder about the world that we're leaving them. But that's the whole reason I became an artist, is because I'm trying to influence the world in my own small way, Right. So. And maybe I became a police officer for the same reason. Oh, so telling you about myself, I'm married.
This was good. That was very good. That was a good way of telling me about yourself. I learned a lot.
My wife is an incredible human being. We've been married for over 22 years, and we have a very good relationship. And with trials and tribulations, so we're forged. I think that people have to go through some things before they really know what each other are made of. So we've had a really remarkable journey. And I was a police officer for 25 years for Las Vegas Metro, and did a whole lot of jobs there, did undercover work, did special operations work, did administrative work, did really fun secret squirrel things, and all kinds of crazy stuff. Had a remarkable career working with excellent people. I saw a lot of things change, and then nothing change is kind of the usual, right? I believe that Metro is a very progressive department. I think that they've really tried to stay on the cutting edge of being culturally aware. and trying to communicate with all of the people that we serve. Unfortunately, they fall short like everybody else, and they still have work to do. But they're doing a lot better than a lot of other places. And the thing that's so screwy about police business is that there's 10,000 plus police departments in the United States with 10,000 plus policy manuals. And while we all operated within the constructs of the United States Constitution, the culture of those departments is widely different.
Right.
And you see the behaviors, to me, that are unacceptable, that seem to be the daily, just how things are done in certain places. And I personally couldn't truck with that, not from my upbringing, the way I feel about the world. I couldn't work in that kind of environment. I felt the Metro was very keen on the community, and not originally, but it's been working that way for a long time. And I think the people that work there are very good people. I think most people that are cops are decent folks who just want to have a safe world. But that being said, as I said in an article I just wrote not that long ago, we hired from the human race. Everybody does. You're never going to be perfect. And what you're asking of police now in today's modern policing world is an impossible task. It cannot be done. It can only be tried. Or, what does Yoda say? There is no try, just do. You can't do it. You can't wear all those hats and be successful. What I think needs to happen going forward is that we need to push the professionalism side of police. It is a professional job. It requires a professional education. It requires a professional level of mindset, because really smart people don't usually run towards people with guns. Okay, it's a thing they don't do. So I don't know. I still think there's lots of really smart cops. I put myself as an averagely intelligent person, but I had this thing in me that allowed me to make that decision in times of crisis to go into danger rather than away from it. That's the only real difference between me and any other schmuck running around, right? Mm-hmm. So I have this ability to do that. And a lot of people, it's a segment of society, and it's a very difficult thing to have as your makeup. And you go out there and you risk your life for perfect strangers all the time, and you're in the mess all the time in a very negative environment. There's a lot of issues that come from that. And at the end of the day, you're expected to pack it all up and put it away and go out the next day and do it again and never, ever show a crack in your veneer.
Well,
it's kind of impossible.
That was quite a bio. No, but
I'm sorry. I'm not a published author. No. I've written books. I do. I don't know.
You're very.
I haven't talked to anybody in a while. You can tell I'm fucking fed up, man. I've been sitting not talking to people except on the phone.
No, it's just fantastic. No, you're very prolific, and I really love what you have to say, and it's very interesting, and it does open up a few things that I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork for our discussion a little bit here. I think that it's really easy when people first hear, oh, he's a policeman, so I'm going to start looking and listening to him through this lens.
Of course.
And this lens that is going to paint every syllable in a negative way, so that I'm going to make a comment under this YouTube video about these things, right? And this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do at the beginning of our particular conversation, because it is heated right now. And even though everything you just said was incredibly reasonable and rational, my hope is that anybody that's curious about creativity and what I'm trying to do with my Creative Courage workshop here is it's your obligation to actually be open-minded and listen to things and understand that the core of the person speaking of them comes from a particular place, just like you do. And to allow people to speak and to actually listen to them and then form an opinion on the other side of this thing. Because you don't have the privilege of being me right now, being able to speak to somebody that has been through many things that none of us have been. In the same way that he, as an officer, had to deal with people who had been through an entire lifetime that he didn't understand and didn't appreciate, and had to make split-second decisions without having that background and understanding, and try to create normalcy so that we can get to a place where there's understanding, and then we can all be safe, which is kind of the bigger goal of this thing. And I like to start my workshops with talking about creativity in terms that everybody has a perception of what creativity is. But my goal here is to wipe them away and start with a fresh perspective just for these few moments, to sit there and just be quiet and just listen and see what you get out of this thing on the other end, and try to listen to the entire thing before you actually make a decision. Because good data is something that is incredibly valuable, and a lot of times we take it for granted, and we don't really go and explore good data. And I have many examples of forecasting in the creative process and in problem solving when we assume we know the answer to something before we've done the work. And I think that there's danger in that. There's danger in trying to assume what you think the outcome of a thing is before you actually walk through it and do it. Anyway, I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, because you can't survive as a policeman, um, as a successful policeman, you know, without understanding this, without understanding that there's so many aspects to this thing, and there's a rules that you have to follow, but then there's other things there that aren't in the rules that are learned, and that have to be, empathy has to be involved in kind of coming to this. So I've listened to your work, and I've been going through, fortunately you videotaped them, and it was easier to do that because I could listen to them while I was working, you know, and doing stuff. I could actually listen to it. The passion in there is pretty intense, and I really appreciated it. And I'll tell you, there's different styles of poetry, and what I love, like Pablo Neruda is one of my favorites, and Pablo Neruda is fantastic, and he's emotional, and he delves into a lot of things. And then you have like Charles Bukowski, who is a different poet that I love, who's a very American man poet. You know what I mean? You fall into more
Very,
of that.
very much an influence. Charles was an influence on my work for sure.
Right. And I love him. I love him. I love his brevity, and I love the way, the power he puts into each phrase. And I saw a lot of that in your work, because it's very much from a male perspective. I think it's very much, and it made me feel like, now I'm babbling, now I'm rambling here. But what I wanted to do is kind of tap into something particular, is this idea. It's not a myth in my perspective, but a lot of people think it is. But the idea of honor and nobility, I think, is something that's incredibly powerful and important. And there's a lot that can be drawn from that, and a lot to be learned from that. And I think it's something that's it's not taught. You know, I think there's an assumption of what it is, and by some people, and I think that the assumption of what it is might be based on politics. I don't know, but there's something deeper there. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it's an interesting topic, and I felt a lot of that in your work. I felt a lot of that coming out of you. I got goosebumps, you know, during some of your phrases, just from the way you said your lines. Not only what you said, but the way you said it. And I thought that was something that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to ask you about it. What is that?
I think nobility is learned somewhat. I don't think that it's a manly thing. I think that it's a human thing. I think it has to do with being able to use your integrity as a tool to describe your values. I guess it's like, because nobility and integrity are very close cousins. All right. Doing the right thing is powerful. And when you put a badge on, in my opinion, what I used to tell my people is that no matter what, you're risking your life for someone you've never met. And that is noble. And no one can take that from you. Because I knew that my cops didn't just need armor on their bodies for bullets and shit like that. They also needed armor from the pain of the world that they were pushing themselves into. And you'll never hear, wild horses won't drag that out of any cop. Okay. They're not going to say it out loud usually. But the truth is that the job, you don't get harder and tougher as the years go by. You get more in tune with the fact that the world is not black and white, that the absolutes are not real, that there is a lot of gray in this world, and that it's really a mistake to say all or all of or all those and fill in the blank is not the correct approach on any problem solving adventure or endeavor. I think that nobility teaches you that it's the way to be humble and wield your integrity. I guess but you have to do both. And I think that it's part of your learning growing up. I think that if you're taught to accept people at their value rather than what they look like or where they're from or their color, their skin, or what their religion is. And if you just look at the person themselves, I was taught that as a kid. And I don't think that's being taught in every household. I honestly, from what I've seen, it's not. And I think that our structures of society, there are some parts that just seem to always drive a negative viewpoint that is so detrimental to our unity. And I'm like, why would you subscribe to that? How did you learn that? How did you find your way to a point where you saw the world in such absolutes that everyone from this group is bad somehow? or everyone from that group is good somehow even. The world is full of balance. Nobility is part of balance too. And nobility is recognizing each individual for who they are and taking, as difficult as it is, but remaining cool in the storm of all that shit. And that's the hardest thing to do, but it can be done. It's done all the time. And my hats are off to the police of America, you know, the ones that are doing their job and being professional. I don't think anybody has any issue with those guys. I don't think anybody has any issue with that type of policing. I think what's happened is that there's been so many issues that seem to be brushed over, ignored, or just not really that important to the administration of those departments, that people are starting to see patterns of, do you give a shit or not when an element, when some element of society is carved out, in this case Black people, is carved out as the target of anything, suppression, law enforcement, whatever. It's not absolute that direction either, okay? There is systemic racism, okay, in our system, and it's to ignore it is to be ignorant, and it is to set yourself up for failure. But it is not a broken system that doesn't work. It's not that at all. And that's one of the things the youth, they always see it as broken. They always see it needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. I don't agree. Maybe it's the time behind me, but I do believe that change need to happen. And where I worked, there was a lot of changes throughout my career that I felt were progressive, but still it's not enough. And we need to continue to try to be better as people. That's how you evolve. That's how you become better. What I don't want to see happen is I don't want to go backward in life. I don't want to go back to times when my son had to be afraid all the time because of his sexual orientation. I don't want to go back to the time when women weren't allowed to vote or had to cover up in public because their men controlled them. You know, my mother, she had a hysterectomy when she was young, much younger. My father had to sign permission for her to have that hysterectomy. I don't want to go back to that shit, okay? I like the idea of people being fulfilled as human beings and having the opportunities to be as fulfilled as they can. And that's part of the creative energy, right? If you've read my work or heard it, you know, yeah, I'm very passionate, but also I always keep hope in all of my work. There's always hope in there. I don't write hopeless work, and I can't help it. I'll sit and write something that's pretty hopeless, and I just have to make it hopeful because I'm putting it out to the world. I'm pushing it out there. I'm going to spread this message, whatever it might be. And it might be a painful message to hear, and it might be ugly, and it might make people pissed off or whatever. But at the end of the day, I want them to have some hope that we can improve, that we can do better, that we can become better.
Yeah. I'm watching your poem, The Thunder, live right now.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing where that comes from.
I've done a lot of police poetry.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of non-police poetry.
Right.
And I'm going to share a poem with you today. It's not a police poem.
Yeah, that would love. I actually want to do that if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about. Well, why don't you can just go ahead and read it and then tell us a little bit about it after maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So this piece is, I just talked about hope. This isn't as hopeful as I like, but it's a response to opinions, believing opinions instead of facts. Okay. I have a real problem with that. So I love when experts in areas that they're not experts in have an opinion about things that they don't know anything about, and yet somehow that's over the opinion of somebody that has devoted their life to understanding something. It's crazy. You know, some lawyer is talking about epidemiology, or he's talking about surgery or whatever it is, and there's a surgeon talking about the same thing, and people are going, "No, I believe the lawyer." I don't understand that. It's just it's really interesting. But if we don't believe anything, we're fucked.
Right. No, yeah, by the way, it's a little late for that. It's okay. No worries. No, I agree with that. I've always been of the opinion that when everybody. Actually, no, never mind. I'm not going to get into that. Let's go ahead and listen to your poem. Let's go ahead and listen to that. I was going to open up a whole other thing, and I don't want to do that. Let's go ahead and just jump right into your poem.
All right, this is called This American Dream. Mm-hmm. What did you do when the liars came for you? Had you been faithful to the red, white, and blue? Had you known the truth? When you look down, do you see the root? Do you pull it with both hands and cry, clinging to the earth that won't rip away and die? Did you know the truth deep inside? Where were you when metal boxes were constructed, labor of leather-clad hands by those instructed to keep out the poison from those who induction occurred at the behest of savvy reductions to be from somewhere else, the savage introduction For the immigrant you forsake, another soul to cull and take, ignoring the love and washing in hate. Where do you hide when the burning begins, when the righteous and holy and pontiffs at sin grab you and your family and throw you all in to a mass rotting grave that bubbles and grins, filled with the remains of all of your kin? Led by the liar, you point and you scoff, beat on the different and hang them aloft, bully and berate and harder, no room for the soft. A world without compassion, without art and free minds, is common throughout the land by design. When brother on brother becomes so unkind, the landmine is laid for the sisters to find. With a grin, the devil just peels the rind. Stand in the gutter with the last angry crowd, voices whose noise has grown quite loud, ripe for the stainless blade to come plow. When you ignore what's happening, don't fret. When it all comes unwound, you deserve what you get. Letting a master puppeteer be well met, so well met. No longer a person, just a rich man's cheap pet. Cantics on a short golden leash, and a treat when you sit. Can't accept this brutal storm. All I can do is shout and warn, as from American life, the truth is shorn.
I got to read a lot of your poems.
It's not a happy poem, but
no, but I like your work. I really like your work. I gotta read a lot more of it. So what inspired that?
Just basically the fact that the news has become a source of one-sided information. Several news sources you have to dig deeper. You can't just rely on the headlines anymore. You've got to dig into stuff a little bit more. And most people aren't willing to do that. They have so little time as it is because they're so busy with all the myriad things people do all day that they're trying to get all their news stuffed in real quick. And depending on which news people I read all the news. I read all of it. And I'm going to stop for 3 weeks. I have a little thing where I'm not going to read the news for 3 weeks. I'm not going to
see what happens.
Facebook for 3 weeks.
See if the world keeps spinning.
I'm sure it will. And I'm sure it'll be the same shit when I open it back up.
Yeah.
But I need to do that for myself because it's a very negative environment when you study the news. Because what happens is after a while, you do learn the truth within all of the meandering crap that you have to dig through. But by the time you do that, your head is filled with so many just disparate things that don't make any sense that it's really hard to flush all of that out. So that poem was in response to what I've seen as far as public opinion and personal opinion just being so much more important than actual facts about things. And it's like some people have decided, it's like any other, if you deal with somebody who's a conspiracy theorist, it's like arguing religion with somebody. You're not going to convince someone who has belief in something of anything. You're wasting your words. So I don't tend to do that. I tend to tell the conspiracy theorists, I'm like, good, I don't know what to tell you. You have decided that that's what happened, even though I was there and saw different. Okay, I can't help you at this point.
Well, we've kind of turned into this society where we aren't willing to see, because I don't agree that people are too busy.
They're not.
They think they're too busy. They think they are. You're not as busy as you think you are. They've always got room to do stuff, and you should be, and just like in general, you should be creating something. And one of the creations that you should be making is actually forming an opinion. Don't borrow an opinion. Make your own opinion.
A great saying, Alex. Don't borrow an opinion, because you know what? Opinions are like assholes, and everyone has one. And now you're an asshole too.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is about the news. The thing about the news, though, also is not everything in the news is a lie. Now it is painted in sometimes ways, and if anybody, even the liberals out there that are listening, that are thinking, no, the news is the truth. It is so painted and with bias. And even when it's saying the truth, it's saying it in a snide way, where there's so I think that there's something to be said for taking data from the news and then exploring. If there's something that you think seems wrong or strange, explore a little bit, do a little bit of, but then where is it that you're going to get the data? Because if the news is giving you all your information, where else do you go? Well, you know what? You can go read some poetry.
Yeah, you can read poetry. You can read.
Because
you can do a lot.
Yeah, because I found that when I read poetry, it even poetry that's hundreds of years old, it's so relatable now because we're people and we process data and information the same. And I think that once you start doing that, you start to realize that we're all different, but we're all heading in the same direction. Because everybody, I don't care who you are, well, I'd like to think everybody, I'm going to say 99% of the people in the world on both sides of the fence all want a better world for their kids. It's just we disagree on how to get there. We disagree on the way.
I guess, Alex, but you say all, I, first of all, the sides thing already has me. This liberal versus conservative bullshit. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a liberal or a conservative. I'm a centrist in my viewpoints. It doesn't matter though what my political leanings are, because it goes beyond political leanings. The world is a bigger place than the United States of America. It's
Right.
the whole world. And when you say all, and you said 99%, you pulled back a little bit. The fact is human beings have the capability to grow.
Yeah.
They have the ability to learn. They have the ability to do better. They have the ability to know better. When you choose not to think critically, I can't help you. If you're going to be subservient to someone's opinion, I can't help you. If you're going, all I can do is write poetry about it. And if you're already not practicing philosophy in your life of any kind, you don't have any philosophy, you don't have anything that you, even a religious idiom or whatever that you structure your moral framework around. If you don't have any of that and you're just out there floating along, I mean, that's pretty unusual. Most people have some sort of framework that they fall back on. And usually it's a moral framework that involves a higher power. It's usually a moral framework that involves doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. And, we define what the right and the wrong thing are pretty strongly across all lines of thought, right?
Yes.
I think that when we say the right and the left, it's like Bill Hicks. He said, I like the puppet on the left because he says what I agree with.
Right.
And the guy, I like the puppet on the right because he says what wait a minute. There's one guy working both puppets.
Yeah.
I love that saying because that's the truth of all of it.
Yeah.
It really isn't. A lot of this is distraction. A lot of it is dealing with people's inability to explore beyond the most micro level of understanding of things. They won't explore beyond that. I get it. That's just people. I know they're not too busy. I was being a little facetious, I guess. But getting people to do that, I don't know. There's a lot of smart people that are doing it. There's a lot of people that are looking at it and trying to see the big picture and what is best for the most people at once, not just this group or not just that group or not just this particular segment of society. But in light of that, we cannot ignore things that have happened in our country since we were incepted. Slavery is a real thing that happened. Our economy was built on it for a long time. And I know it's ancient history right now, but it's not that ancient. And if we're still doing things within our structures that are keeping people from opportunity, we need to fix that shit. So Black lives do matter. That is my opinion. And all lives do matter. And cops matter. And I can support Black Lives Matter and police in the same person. And I do. I support both because they're not opposed to each other. As hard as people want you to think they are, they're not opposed. Police want safety for everyone under their best doctrine. Black Lives Matter wants safety for everyone under their best doctrine. I don't see a real problem in their ideology, okay? There's really no clash. The rest of it is political horseshit and people trying to use the energy from it for various agendas, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's mostly kids that just want a better future for themselves, that have seen some things from us old farts that they don't like.
Right.
And I applaud them. Change is good. Keep it going, kids, because I'm handing you this pile, and you could do with it hopefully better than what I did with it.
Well,
better than what our ancestors did with it.
I raised my daughter on punk rock, so I think that I'm actually watching the results of that right now. I
am too.
I put her to sleep to Iggy Pop,
We're a musical family. My sons both are musicians. And
yeah.
play guitar, and my younger son plays drums. They produce music, and they are very artistic. But my one son is more, I won't label him as left really, but he's much more liberal than I am. And then my other son is much more conservative than I am. So I don't even know how that works, because I brought them both up and they're totally different people, but they both are inheriting a world that is filled with a lot of discontent.
Well, I think that's an easy thing to predict. I mean, I'm willing to bet you raise them to think for themselves and form their
Yes.
own opinions, and I think that's just what's happened.
And they back their opinions with facts, and they go after the common sense stuff,
Right.
and they look at it, and they're really more in tune with large picture items than I ever was at that age. I mean, I was thinking about none of that when I
Well,
was until I was in college. I got the ideology in college, you know, and I was a little bit probably idealistic because that's you're living in a bubble when you're at school, and it makes me disgusted to think someone would say that I've been indoctrinated by the school system, or that I'm a certain way because of the way I was taught. That pisses me off. How fucking dare you? Okay.
right.
I have my own brain and I make my own decisions. And I'm a product of the Clark County School District, and I still manage to become a successful human being who thinks for himself.
Ouch.
So go fuck yourself with that opinion.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway,
But I see it all the time, and I'm like, okay, don't smash teachers. I love teachers. Leave them alone.
well, I'm really sad that you're so shy about your opinions, and that it's so difficult to get you to express yourself.
It's nice. I'm not an active cop anymore. I had to keep my mouth shut about a lot of things. I'm still, though, I don't mean to. I'm not denigrating anybody,
No.
and I don't. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, as you say, and I've very strong conservative friends and very strong liberal friends that are artists. Obviously, as an artist and a cop, it's almost impossible for me because I'm standing in both worlds all the time. I feel like I'm being ripped in half sometimes. But the other part of me feels pretty lucky that I have so much input from so many people, because it gives me a very well-rounded view of what's going on, as far as people's opinions, at least. And
So,
I tell my cop friends, hey, you guys are going to be okay. They're going to be okay. They're going to defund the police. They're going to make some
I don't even know what that means.
I don't either. But I know that there's reform is needed.
Yeah,
It's
no,
needed.
yeah. But you don't have to destroy something to fix it, right?
No,
You just
but
have to.
in some cases, maybe there are departments that do need to be turned inside out.
Right.
Minneapolis might be the example. I don't know. And I think that if that's the case, if it's gotten to that point, then I think that a well thought out plan needs to be implemented, and it has to be based on models that have shown to be progressive in the United States. There are models that have been shown to be progressive. It's not all negative. It's not all bad. But I am not going to step away from the fact that work needs to be done. A lot of work.
People need to remember that these aren't trigger words. These are words that you say progressive, and then people kind of go in a certain direction. But I know what you're saying.
What direction is that? I wonder. Progressive. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like the idea that it's Maya Angelou. If you know better, you do better. It comes down to that. It's like, look, if you know that this stuff affects this group of people in a way that is completely disproportionate to the way it affects other people, maybe you need to take a look at it. Maybe it needs to be reworked. Maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe, you know how many shitty ideas are out there that are still being implemented? I mean, I could go down the list. Scared Straight's one of my favorite, but there's all these things that people think are a great idea, and they don't work. And they actually cause a negative response, but they're still out there. Those ideas, they're still being done, and it doesn't matter. We do a lot of stupid shit. It's
we tend to love to pat ourselves on the back for having the right answers to the wrong questions. That's
yeah, but we do. But we are also, and because you said progressive, might trigger somebody. I'm like, progressive doesn't mean upending the system.
No, but I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm just saying that I know that that's a trigger word.
Of course, well, it is, and triggering words is another thing. I don't care. How's that? If I trigger people, it's not. I'm an artist. I want to trigger people, but not in a negative way. I want to trigger them in the sense that, hey, is your mind now thinking about something you didn't think about before?
Well, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. But the unfortunate thing is these, when we're trying to communicate ideas and trying to communicate things, people don't allow themselves to listen once they hear a thing, that then they think they can paint you in a certain way because you used a word that they believe means.
I feel like Black Lives Matter.
And all of a sudden,
I turned off half of the audience.
Right.
Conservatives have a really great fiscal sense about things, and everybody's going to be turned off about that.
Well, the thing, that's what I was trying to do, and that's part of that's the other thing about the nobility thing. Maybe I think that I almost kind of feel like, for me, hearing that you worked as a police officer and a poet already has as me wanting to hear more and wanting to listen your perspective, because those are two very powerful things and a very personality traits that a lot of people think clash in some ways.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that because you can't be a poet and be narrow-minded. You just can't.
No.
You'd never even be able to do it. And you have to be somebody that's willing to dive into the dark sides and to the light sides, and in different ways. And you have to actually understand the darkness and to be able to express it in the way that you want to express it. And there's so much to that. It's funny because like all this stuff that you've been saying, this is one of my favorite interviews so far. I love talking to you.
Well, that's kind of you to say.
This discussion, if you haven't read the poem Enigmas by Pablo Neruda,
I've read it.
It's one of my favorite poems.
I understand why.
Yeah, and the very last part of it, I think, is incredibly important, where he says, I am the empty net that has gone on the head of human eyes, dead in those darknesses, a finger accustomed to the triangle longitudes of the timid globe of an orange. I was like you, investigating that endless star, and in the night, in that net, I woke up naked. The only thing caught was a fish trapped inside the wind. And I love that because it's what we're talking about, because all of us throw these nets out into the world to catch, to see what we're going to get back. And when we open up the net, what do we find? We find ourselves. It's just us.
We find our wish.
Yeah, it's just our own view. And all we're doing is we're throwing out, that's what the internet is. People love to share quotes on the internet. You always see people sharing quotes. And it always frustrates me because you're sharing this quote because it says something that you believe in. So you think that it's just sharing the quote is enough. Why not the inspiration that you got from this quote? Do something with it.
Well, not everybody has the ability probably to do that.
But not artistically. I mean,
Right.
You could do it in so many ways. Donate blood. Buy a book and donate it to the library or something. Do little tiny things rent count. And I think that's something that people also think. Everybody thinks they need to do these magical, huge things to accomplish anything. But the world is made by small accomplishments. The world is built on small steps going in the right direction. And I think that's something that is important to kind of consider. Each line of your poetry stands on its own. It's probably very powerful on its own, but put in context, it has a more grand kind of feel to it, right? I think that's something that Charles
may not give you the context that you need to really be influenced by the idea that's behind the quote. And I get that.
And Bukowski hated writers because he thought they wasted too much time describing crap.
Yep, he just liked to get right to the gut of it.
Yeah.
I like Bukowski. I've got like 6 influencers that really influenced my poetry growing up, but Bukowski's one of them.
All right, geez, right here. It's a great book.
Yep. Oh, I have it right over here. I can pull out. I've got 8 of those books up on my shelf right now. I love them all.
Yeah.
Heading on the Muse is probably my favorite though.
Are you published?
Oh yeah.
Oh, fantastic! So I'll put the links to your books or whatever you have. We'll share that and everything. But it's funny because this totally went in a different direction than I was expecting, and I love where we went with this discussion. I think that we tapped into a lot of stuff. We're into an hour.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a couple things.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. That's what I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
As far as art goes, I think it's really, really important that we continue to make art and that we continue to try to find those sources of pain inside ourselves and share our ability to deal with it. And I think that that's important for artists to do that and to expose the things in society that need exposing, and to also to dust off the things that need some dusting off and some polishing, and to bring it to a better place than where it is right now. I'm hopeful that people will treat each other with respect. At the end of the day, hate is not a good way to live your life. It's a painful way to live, and it's a poison that you take while you're waiting for somebody else to die. Basically, is hate. So I'm hopeful that people don't hate, and that they just try to remember what you said earlier, which is that we're all kind of have the same goal as human beings. We all want to be safe. We all want to raise our children in a place where we don't have to worry so much that we can't let them outside. And I think that that's a pretty common thing. But I also want to live in a world where we've done really make an effort, because I know we're not perfect, so we won't have perfection, but we need to be striving towards equality for people. We need to strive towards that. We need to try to understand people that are not the same as us, instead of constantly being the other, because I don't feel that way. I don't live my life like that. I'm able to operate in this world with a variety of diverse people in my life. And they're so diverse. And that's one of the things I love about this world that we live in America, because you get to be diverse here. There's a lot of places in the world, we take it for granted. There's places in the world where you cannot be diverse. You will be shut out of society. You'll be hurt, possibly even killed in some regimes for your thoughts and your feelings. And here in America, we still get to express them. Whether someone agrees with them or not really isn't that a big a matter of great importance. And sorry about that. We've got to treat each other. I think if we could just turn on our empathy gene just a little bit more, just a little bit, nudge that thing up a little higher, and realize that it's not just me, it's us. You know, cops are out there every day, and they are doing those small acts you talked about all the time. They're always helping people. And occasionally somebody rises up and does some dicky move, and if it's allowed, then that system needs to be repaired. And that is, or recreated, or however you want to, word it. And there is no doubt that that needs to happen in a lot of places. And it's a constant work in progress. At the same time, it doesn't hurt to be gentle towards people, even if you don't agree with them. It does not hurt to try to understand their viewpoint. And just instead of shutting them out, like you said, if you're hearing something and then shutting your mind, I understand why we do that, because when something doesn't agree with us, it becomes uncomfortable. But I think that we as human beings, if we want to be successful going forward, we need to be critical. And we need to be able to absorb the criticism that others give us as well. We need to be able to put it out and take it and see it for what it's worth, throw away the garbage, because there's plenty of it, and accept the truths about our humanity and be able to move forward with that as our shield, as our sword, as our nobility.
Mm-hmm. Nice way to round that out. Well done.
I hope this is a good interview.
You are a writer, that is for sure. That was a very good way to close it up. Yeah, I agree with you 1,000% on everything. And I always talk about rewind moments on this talk, and that there's moments, and but I think you got to rewind to the beginning, because the whole thing was pretty great. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thanks for thinking of me and having your friend reach out. And
I really appreciate it.
Anything to further art and make art more prevalent in people's lives, I'm all about. I think that we all need to delve a little into that. There's plenty of local artists that could use your support. Painters, musicians, poets. That when the community is embracing them, it means everything to the work that they do.
Well, you and I need to keep in touch, and maybe we can find another reason to have another chat, or just have a beer.
That's awesome, dude. We can talk about poetry.
Sounds like a plan to me. Sounds like a plan. Well, thanks again.
You have a wonderful day.
All right, you too.